Recently, I had the honor of participating in a conference in Ottawa where Christians and Jews discussed how to combat anti-Semitism in Canada. It's a serious question. Canada's 402,000 Jews are less than 1% of the population, but are the target of 70% of the hate crimes committed in Canada. One rabbi said that since October 7, 2023, when the latest assault on Israel began, he has processed more applications for Aliyah than ever, as his congregation members choose to return to Israel rather than remain in an increasingly unsafe Canada. This rabbi's son was afraid to wear his kippah at school because of the bullying he suffered. Another rabbi said that as a liberal political activist, she had sought to help others secure safe spaces, only to learn that there was no safe space for Jews. That's why Canadian Jews are now asking, "Who can I trust to hide me?" My first Israeli friend asked me that same question. In her professional life in Washington, D.C., she had to hide her identity not only because she feared loss of her job, but because she feared for her life. That was in 2011. In 2025, 2 young Jewish diplomats were shot dead in Washington simply because they were Jews. This is an issue we must address because we Christians, Messianics, and Hebraic believers profess to worship the God of Israel, having proclaimed our allegiance to Jesus, the Messiah King of Israel we now know as Yeshua. This issue is the central point God is bringing to our attention in this time. That's why I wrote a book about it called Christian Zionism 101, 10 Reasons Christians Should Support Israel and the Jewish People. Paul addressed this with the non-Jewish believers in Rome, reminding them that the Jews had great advantages even though many had not received revelation of Yeshua as Messiah. He explained that the Jews were given the oracles of God, the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the Torah, the temple service, the promises, the patriarch, and from them comes the Messiah. Paul rebuked the Romans for boasting against the natural branches of Israel's olive tree into which they were grafted by the grace and mercy of God. The lesson is that we have been shown mercy so that we can show mercy to the Jewish people. This is part of the process by which all Israel will be saved, both the natural and the wild branches. Paul also teaches us that the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. Well, that means the Jewish people still have the gifts and calling God placed on them when he called Abraham to father the covenant nation of Israel. Their survival as the visible remnant of Israel is testimony to the world that there is a God who keeps his promises and will bring final redemption to Israel and the nations. Well, how do we know God is in this? Especially since most Jews still don't recognize Yeshua as Messiah. Because God said so. In Leviticus, he explains that his covenant people will walk away from him and will suffer the consequences. Yet there is hope, for God says, "But if they confess their iniquity and that of their fathers, in the treachery they committed against me, and how they walked contrary to me, in return I walked contrary to them, and brought them into the land of their enemies. And if at that time their uncircumcised heart becomes humbled, so that they accept the punishment for their iniquity, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. But the land will be deserted by them, and will enjoy its Sabbaths, while it lies desolate without them. And they will accept the punishment of their iniquity, because they rejected my ordinances, and their soul abhorred my statutes. Yet for all that, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them, nor will I hate them into utter destruction, and break my covenant with them. For I am Adonai, their God. But for their sake I will remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am Adonai. Jews have been confessing their iniquity for generations, especially since the destruction of the Second Temple. God has heard them, and he has come through on his promises. They're back in the promised land of Israel, and many are awakening to their spiritual identity and destiny. I've seen this with my own eyes, and I'm confident that the covenant-keeping God of Israel will finish his kingdom work in and through them and their allies. It's all about God and always has been. When he sealed the covenant with Abraham, he swore by himself, for there was no higher name on which he could call. Knowing Abraham's seed would fall away, he promised he would remember the covenant for their sake and would never reject them, hate them into destruction, or break his covenant with them. That's why the Jewish people are still with us, and why they are now a nation in the land of their inheritance. If God has come through with this much of his promises to the Jews, why should we doubt whether he would come through on all the rest? More importantly, we as Christians are called to take part in this process by connecting with the Jews and learning how we can help.